the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I have a special guest with us today. I have Christopher Pelton. He is the creator of the Psychotoxin Tales Press. Christopher, how's it going, my friend?
Oh, it's going really good, Travis. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the love there for us. We're doing pretty good. Um, it's the iTales store has been. I grew up. I grew up. I'm almost 50, so I'm old. And I mean, I grew up in the time of CD, singles and CD singles and 45 records, and all of that stuff. So when digital happened and everybody made the move over to iTunes and everybody's 99 cents, it killed the record industry. And the record industry, it's their own fault. They didn't see it coming. So lately, we've been doing a lot of. I was receiving a lot of short stories, and they were really good, but they didn't always necessarily have a home, the right home, if we were doing an anthology or something like that. But they were really good stories. So I'm all about finding the good stories. I mean, and we're primarily horror, but what we've got a book coming out this month it's a it's a comedic fantasy novel. One of the funniest things I've ever read in my life, and it's outside of our wheelhouse, but it's such a great story. I'm like, I'd be foolish not. People need to read this book. It's hysterical. So, with the short stories coming in, the iTales idea kind of popped into my head. I was like, it worked. It worked for music. People would buy 99 cents for a song that they never heard, and maybe they'd find a brand new artist that they'd love, and they'd follow that artist for the rest of time. And like we used to do with 45s or radio airplay and all of that stuff. And so the idea kind of hit me. I was like, I've got all these great short stories that come in all the time that don't have the right home because we don't always have an anthology that, oh, this is perfect for this book, or we're doing this collection and it's perfect for. So the idea hit me. I was like, well, why don't we just try and see if we can sell them as singles? And so we started accepting the stories, and we reached out to folks, and I was like, hey, this is what I'd like to try. I can't guarantee anything, but if you give me permission, if you trust me with your work, give me permission. We'll put together a cover for it if we need to, and we'll put it up on the store. We'll sell it for $1, and if it sells, it sells, and you get 50 cents. And they were like, well, that's fair enough, because I mean, otherwise you're just sitting on it. Why not? I mean, get it out there and let people see what what you're capable of. I had to adjust the pricing a little bit because after the website fees and the PayPal fees, I was only making 48 cents a book on the dollar sale. So it was actually costing me money. But we adjusted a little bit. Now everybody's happy. I get like a nickel a book or whatever, but the artists are exposed. And there has not been a day since we launched that section of the website that we haven't sold something from it. So that makes me feel really good because it tells me that somewhere there are still people. And the great part about it for people who haven't been to the store, and you said you had taken a look at it, there's no descriptions for any of the stories. You're going in completely blind. You're looking at a cover, and you're looking at, okay, this is the title, this is the cover, this is the artist, and that's all you know. And to me, it was important because a lot of people will buy, the same thing, again, going back to the music days. You buy the artist because that's, that you found one song and then you find love the rest of your life.
Comfort.
Yeah. And now, like, I have writers who have iTales stories that either have novellas coming out with us or we're in the discussion of working on longer length projects. And for me, it's all about if the one person finds that iTales story and finds, like the one that came out today by Matthew Gleason, it's a delightful little story. And if somebody finds that and has never read Matt's work before, which is a shame because Matt is a very talented young writer, and they find that story and, he's got a novella out already. And we're talking about doing other projects. So if somebody stumbles across that story this week and says, oh, wow, I really enjoyed that. What else has this guy written? Now Matt's got a potential new customer for the rest of his writing career. And for me, it's funny with Psychotoxin because, I mean, I'll give you the kind of, it's an abbreviated history. We've only been doing this since September. I was selling toys the last couple of years. I was doing toy shows and a lot of stuff, and I was doing a lot of writing. And in 2020, my first book came out. I self-published it. It was a collection of flash fiction stories, and I did it as a kind of a challenge to myself to see if I could maintain that, because flash fiction is very regimented. It's 1,000 words, done. And once you're, anything past that, you're just being too wordy, or the story isn't a flash fiction story, it's a short story, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I wanted to test myself and see, okay, can I maintain this mindset of 1,000 words tops? That's it. If you got something to say, you got to say it, and be direct about it. And I had a really good time writing it, and I published it in early 2020, and then the pandemic happened. But the funny thing for me is I'm bipolar, and I'm also agoraphobic. So I wasn't leaving the house anyway. So when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden the rest of the world had to learn to live like me, because I wasn't going anywhere. If I needed food, they would bring me food. If I needed, anything I could need, somebody can deliver to me, and that's a beautiful thing. Very easy to be agoraphobic these days. Not a good thing at all, but very easy to do now. So the first book came out, and it didn't sell a lot of copies, but it sold a few copies. I got to claim, writer on my taxes that year, so that was kind of exciting. And the second book came out in 2022, which is a book of longer short stories. And during that time, I had been submitting to magazines, I would see submission calls and stuff, and I would think, okay, here, try this. Maybe you guys would like that. Here's a werewolf thing, and it wasn't one of those things that I was like. I know a lot of writers who live and die by the suggestion, by the submission calls, and I totally understand why. But for me, it was like, if they like it, they like it, and if they want to publish it, great. If they don't want to publish it, that's okay. I write for myself, and if people like what I write, great. I'm very happy. I'm very happy to provide, and it's kind of how I fell into being a publisher, because when the books had come out, and I was submitting to magazines, and I got a couple of submissions accepted in a couple of smaller magazines, and it felt really good in a weird way, because I didn't need to be told, yes sir, you're good enough, but it was nice to be acknowledged in that regard. But it was hard. And I know a lot of people who submit every day, or like 3-4 submissions a week, and they never hear anything, and it's frustrating as hell. So when I had finished and released my second book, I was like, maybe I can do a magazine. What the hell? Give it a try. Let me see, if I can drum up enough interest, because prior to the first book coming out, excuse me, in 2020, I had been off social media for 5 years. When certain terrible things happened in American politics, I took my already poor state of mind and said, you know what, I just can't. So for 5 years, I was off social media. So, but when I was releasing the book, I was like, shit, in this day and age, you got to self promote, and the easiest way to do that, unfortunately, is Facebook and all of that. So so I got back on there, but I was seeing a lot of people who were writing all these stories and were telling all these stories about how, they would send work out to submission calls, and 6 months would go by, 8 months would go by, and they never hear from anybody. And I'm like, that's maddening. If I'm not good enough, tell me I'm not good enough. Or if you like my work, tell me you like my work. But to leave somebody hanging that long, especially for a short story. So I said to myself, well, let's see, maybe I'll try to do a magazine. So I sent out, I put a submission call out on Facebook to some people I had been chatting with and stuff. And I was like, I'm nobody really, I wrote a couple of books. A lot of people have written a couple of books. And I was like, if I get like 10 or 15 submissions, I'll be happy. I'll put together a little 5 or 6 story magazine, and we'll get it out into the world, and that'll be great. 130 submissions came in for the first issue of the magazine. And it was overwhelming, because it was literally submissions from all over the world. Like, I had never read a horror story from Nigeria. I had never read a horror story from Versailles. I never, these stories came in from everywhere. And so every day, these magnificent, like, crazy stories, because the world is full of horrors, but it's filled with different horrors for different people. So it's just all this exposure to just this international, world that I wasn't really aware of. And we did the first issue, and it came out great. And it cost me $500 for 150 print issues, and I got to print 7 stories out of 130 because print is expensive. And I love print. Don't get me wrong, love it. I love holding it in my hand. I'm an old school comic book guy. I love holding it in my hand, but it's
Digital,
expensive.
the digital way. Yeah.
A quarterly, even the idea of doing a quarterly magazine at that point was still like, okay, I mean, that's 500. I'm trying to, live my life and make some, make some headway here. And that's a major expense, and it's limited. So I switched over to digital, and we released the first issue of our digital magazine, I want to say in December of last year or November of last year. And we put the orange crook on the cover. And we had I think it was 6 or 7 stories in there, from just different. The first issue was just kind of let's take 2020's America and tell me what's wrong with it in your own horror ways, like, and there was a lot of political, like, oh, nudge nudge wink wink kind of stories, and they were a lot of fun. And so the first issue went over pretty well, and there was some talk about it, and we made it available on the website, and it was $3, and sold a few copies, and hype started to build. And in the meantime, I'm still going through all of these submissions from the first print issue, and I'm like, oh, and I'm starting to notice, like, oh wow, I've got like 12 stories here from Canada. Well, why don't we do an issue featuring all writers from Canada? So, and so the second issue ended up being writers based in the UK, and because we had gotten a ton of them. And then we did an issue for Canada, based in Canada. We did an issue based in writers from Australia. We did our women's empowerment issue back in March, and we did our Pride issue this month, or last month. And I love the magazine. Idolatry Digital it's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun doing it. We're on hiatus right now because, and it's weird because usually when I have to put a project to the side, it's for a bad reason. But we have, over the next 9 weeks, we have 9 releases coming out, all novellas or short story collections. We're booked every week, and we had done a submissions call for novellas back in February. And that, again, we had like 40 or 50 submissions between like February and April. So, and now now I'm the only person who's doing the regular reading. At this point, I've got 2 partners. One of them is a writer and an artist, and he's doing a lot of the interior art and everything like that. And the other guy is my ad and my social media guy. So he's creating our video ads, and he's taking care of our social media presence on Facebook and all the other places we are. So I'm the one who's, sitting with a stack of novellas on my hard drive, 40 or 50 books deep, and I'm trying to read through as fast as I can because I don't want to be the guy who doesn't reach out to people for 6 months or 8 months or 10 months. If I find your story and I think you've written a good story, I'm not going to waste time. If I decide I like this is a great story, I think a lot of people are going to dig it. Do you want to publish it? And I'm starting to get a reputation for my turnaround. Because I mean, if I find a story today that's solid and needs minimal, needs some formatting, some grammar, no major overhauls, I could have it out next week. I mean, if I believe that strongly in it, and it's that good of a thing, I can turn it around and I can get them out. And a lot of people have, I'm starting to get that reputation because people are surprised when they submit like the first, the first draft they'll send me, and we'll be like, okay, we want to print this. Then I'll start doing the grammar work and all of that to go through, because we've already read it. We've already determined, yes, this is ready to go. It just needs, grammar checking. It needs, minor things, no major edits, none of that stuff. I don't have time, and I don't have a team who has time to do major rehauls. And if it's not ready, it's not ready. And I'll let folks know, hey, look, this is what is strong. This is what needs work. If you want to rework it and come back to us in a couple of months with it, I'll be more than happy to read it again. It's if I tell you, I try to see, or at least find something positive in all of the work that I read. And very, very few times have I just been like, oh Lord, and you look for something, you try to find something nice to say, but sometimes and it's a rare occasion, very rare occasion that I've just had to been like, no, dude, really, just
Our most artists receptive to your criticism or your critique?
Yeah, again, I don't like to. I'm not a big fan of changing writers' words. If the I've had some most of the time when I submit notes back to people, um, I'll tell them, like I said, this is great. This stuff works. Don't change this. I mean, I had someone send me one of the iTales stories actually came from a short story collection that someone sent me, and it was a mixed bag. But this one particular story was really good. It was a solid. It was Kathy gets head, Katie gets head, somebody gets ahead. But by AC Sauer, and it was just in its the form that it was in, it was brilliant. So I was like, you know what? These stories are really good. It needs little tweaks here and there. These two here, not going to work so much. But this one's perfect the way it is. I want to publish this one as an iTales story. And they were hesitant at first, but then they got back to me and they were like, what all does it entail? And so I let them know. I said, look, if you need a cover, we'll make a cover. I've got the benefit of working with some tremendous artists, and I am so. We look. I mean, you've seen the store, the covers in the iTales store. I love the work that the artists do.
Amazing.
Because you go on there and they just pop, and it's not the traditional look of what a horror cover usually looks like. I mean, we've got a story coming out next next Monday's book. The title of the book is "I Knew a Kid Who Ate Worms." The cover's delightful. And it's bright yellow. So like when people see it, they'll be like, oh, it immediately catches the eye. So I try to avoid, especially with the iTales story, I try to avoid the darker, kind of stuff, because I want people's eyes to be like, like go big when they go to that page. Because again, it's a crapshoot. I mean, all the stories I will stand by every single story we've published, in that library. They're there because they deserve to be there. But as a consumer, I acknowledge you're going in blind. You know only what I want you to know about that story. But trust me, you'll find, everybody will find a story, I think, that they will end up being like, wow, that's crazy. What else? And again, for me, it works as it used to work in the music industry. We release a single, and if it hits, people will go buy the album. And that, I mean, for me, when I was in my 20s, it was all about me and my shit. But I'm almost 50 now, and the fact that I'm looking out for our community, because we've got a lot of exciting things going on, but at the same time, I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but if you advertise on Facebook and you're in the horror community, there tends to be a little bit of smashing down the ads that you're paying for. I've heard it from a lot of people. I work very closely with Hart Fisher of Boneyard Press and American Horrors Network, and I mean, I've seen the numbers. He's shown me the numbers that these are the ads that we paid for, and this is where they got placed because of what it is that we because it's a horror book, or it's a horror movie, and so it's frustrating as hell to see that, because you're spending your hard, and as a writer, especially as an up and coming writer, you don't have any money. I don't have any money. I publish, and I'm but I don't have any money. So if I take money to drop an ad to help publish my book, because I believe that I'll be treated fairly, and I'll be my ad will be placed with but it doesn't work that way. So him and I are working together on stuff. The nice thing about having someone who runs a 24-hour streaming horror channel is that we have television advertising available to us, and we've got great packages available for that. I'm working with the folks over at Slasher now. We've talked about a few things, doing some exclusive stuff with them, because they're treating the community the way the community deserves to be treated. I don't know what horror fans did to Facebook to make them hate us the way that they do, but I mean, it's so painfully obvious that I don't see the ads that I know people are paying to have run on Facebook. I should be seeing them. If they're horror ads for horror books or horror projects, they should be in my face. And that's the beauty about Slash. So one thing I love about Slasher is that everybody on there's a horror person. You know, they're all fans. And Damon, he's great, and he's a horror guy. You know, and he understands this is how it should work for our community. So, you know, very excited about the stuff that we're doing with him. The stuff that me and Hart are cooking up is, you know, Hart's been fighting this battle way longer than any of us. He is responsible for the Dahmer comics back in the early 90s that raised a hell of a stink. Netflix kind of borrowed some of the they creatively manipulated some of the stuff that was in his work from 30 years ago to make their Dahmer series last year. Just saying, not accusing anybody of anything, just saying there's a whole lot of similarities. They don't like to talk about it. But I mean, he's been fighting this fight since the 90s. You know, he was picketed against outside. People picketed a guy outside of his house. They took him to court. You know, he was threatened. His life was threatened. I mean, we published a book. We published an autobiography of his earlier this year, and it's just this day. It's amazing how people were treating this guy for telling the truth. And the thing about the first Dahmer book especially, is when that book came out, that book, and I know a lot of people probably haven't seen it. I mean, it's been out of print for long, but there's an update to that too. That book tells the story, and it shows the guy for what he was. He was a monster. But at the same time, that book is on the stands, and the families of the victims are suing comic book publishers for writing these books and telling the truth. The fucking guy is on People Magazine's 20 Most Intriguing People of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
He ate people. He wasn't a good person. He wasn't intriguing. He was a monster. And so the guy who tells the truth about him being a monster, he's the one that gets taken to court, you know, and sued for this. And the ones who are like, oh, what a fascinating individual. No, he's a nutbag. And he ate, and I'm not going to feel bad about what happened to him, because he got what was coming to him. If Wisconsin had had a death penalty, they'd have killed his ass long before the dude who thought he was Jesus did. So, you know, but that's but that was, you know, and this has been going on. I mean, there was comic book store owners going to jail for selling adult comic books to adults. There were comic book creators being arrested for creating adult comic books for adults, and all this was going on. And when I was 17, I didn't have a voice. You know, I was working in a comic book store. I saw all that going on. You know, I knew it was wrong, but I was 17 years old. I didn't have a voice. But I'm 47 now, and I have a publishing company. So I get a certain part of deciding what gets out there and what gets seen by people, because I believe in everything that we've published. And we did a fundraiser recently. I know a lot of people on Facebook were familiar with what happened to C. Derek Miller. He had published a splatter western 3 years ago. It's called Starving Zoe. A lot of people, you know, familiar with the book. Someone took offense to something that was written in the book, which, by the way, was written under a pen name 3 years ago, and took such great offense to it that they tracked this guy down through his ex-wife, and then filed an official complaint with his employer, who then turned around and terminated him. No questions asked, because of a character in a book he wrote 3 years prior to even having the job. And no, oh, well, can you explain it? Nothing, just you're fired. We received this complaint, you're fired. And when I heard that story, it pissed me off, because I already lived through this once. I don't want to see that happen again. So I reached out to the community, and we started a fundraiser. And the Six Flags anthology that we released, any money that we make from it is going to create a legal defense fund for independent horror creators if they find themselves in a situation, you know, where they've been canceled. I hate that term, but you know, if they've been made a target for their work. Because the thing that kills me is writers as a whole, horror writers especially, but writers as a whole, we write what our characters do. We don't do what our characters do. You know, so it's I've heard that, you know, separating the art from the artist. Well, to a certain extent, yes, because, you know, I've written some terrible things in some of my books, but I would never actually do those things in real life. That's why I'm a writer. I'm so for that to happen, that's it was there was a personal vendetta involved, as it turned out. Um, but at the end of the day, if it can happen to him, they can come after any of us for anything that somebody decides they don't like.
I agree, and I'm going to actually be interviewing Hart soon
Really?
in the near future. Uh,
um,
for to
he is very entertaining. I Hart and I we
we,
met,
yes,
yeah, 30 years ago, actually, at the very first Philadelphia Comic Con. I was 16 at the time, or 16 or 17 at the time, and I was wandering around the floor, and I had seen, I'd been there a couple hours, I had seen most of the booths and stuff, and then I just hear this crazy bastard off in the distance, and he's yelling shit, and he's just going on, and I'm like, what the f- is this guy going? So I wander over there, and there's the Boneyard Press booth, and he's talking about the Dahmer book, and he's talking about Kill Marvel and Kill Image, um, and that was how him and I met. And then when I was doing the fifth issue of the magazine, I was looking for a cover artist, and somebody I know had mentioned his name in another, and I was like, wait a minute, I know who you're talking about. Well, so I reached out to him, and we talked weekly now, and we're up to all kinds of stuff. But you'll have a good time. He's entertaining.
but going back to what you're saying, like, so I've been doing this for 4 months, but I'm pretty new to the
Sure.
whole YouTube game. But I've been a horror fan, horror convention fan my whole lifetime, and what you were saying is absolutely true. So I do interviews, but I also do videos of rankings and just rants. And it was something that people warned me about. There's a lot of trolls out there, and everybody, it seems like they're so thin skinned when it comes to your opinion. And my whole thing is when I'm on, to me, this is a show. I'm entertaining
Right.
people. So don't take offense to what I say or how I say it.
Right.
I'm not pointing out anybody as an individual. When I'm talking, this is my art. This is my
Sure.
art. So you cannot be pissed off at me for
Yeah.
my
Not at
work.
all. Not at all. It's there's always going to be a group of people who don't like something. Sometimes it's just like, oh, they're annoying, and then other times, like in the 80s, when The Last Temptation of Christ came out in theaters, there was a group that set a theater in Paris on fire because they didn't want their movie being shown in that theater. I mean, they set the goddamn building on fire because they didn't agree with what was said in the movie, a movie that they hadn't even seen. So I mean, there's always some. Kevin Smith tells a great story about that when they were protesting Dogma. He actually went out to a Dogma protest. Nobody recognized him, so he stood there with a sign and protested his own movie. That's how ridiculous it was. Is that they didn't even know what the people who were legitimately protesting didn't even know what they were protesting. But somebody got mad about something and called up some friends, and all of a sudden, all the like, oh yeah, let's go out there. We used to have down not far from where I live, there was a women's health care center, and they provide excellent services of all varieties. But that type of place always attracts a certain overly opinionated type of individual, and they used to stand out there with their stupid signs and pictures of dead babies and stuff like that. And it's just like, the only message you're getting across here is that you're a lunatic, because normal people don't stand on a street corner with a sign with a picture of a dead baby on it. I write horror, for Christ's sake. I've never even written anything that ridiculous. Never in any of my books has there been some religious nutbag standing outside with a sign with a picture of a dead baby on it. I mean, that's to me, that's inhumane. You want to talk about horror? That's horrifying. Is that people out there are that,
But
and that issue or any other issue, to get to the point where it's we've gotten to where we're a very contradictory society. We continue to at least attempt to be tribal about things still, and the problem with that is we can't. There's no compromise anymore. Like I saw something the other day, and it was openly. it was a post on Facebook, and it was someone basically openly saying, if you hate trans people, I hate you. And I to me that just it doesn't, like, you can't change hearts and minds with that type of a pattern of thought. You can't hate the person that doesn't agree with you. You can try to change their minds, and if you can't, then you can't. But to just openly be like, if you hate this, I hate you, in regards to anything, just to me seems, like there doesn't seem to be any room for compromise anymore. Or you've got the hypocrisy of things, where we've got one side who, you know, openly body shames a 76-year-old man while grasping their pearls when that particular man did the same thing to a comedian. It was okay. It wasn't okay when he did it to her, but it's okay for you to do it to him.
Mhm.
And then we've got the other side who thinks it's okay to force teachers to teach that, slavery was beneficial to the slaves. So yeah, I think we've gone a little bit off of the rocker on both ends. So as I get older, I find myself going more towards center, because the radical on either side is it's just ridiculous. And
You can't. I mean, the liberal side is absolutely crazy, and the conservative side is absolutely crazy. So
yeah, I just can't. Oh, I lost him. Oh, there you go. Thought I lost you. So it's yeah, this is so, so I sit back and I read scary stories, and I publish, I put things into the world that hopefully bring joy to people despite being horrific. I like to say that Psychotoxin Press is a safe space for terrible things. So that seems to be where I'm at, where we're at with that. But the team is great. My media guy Jester, he does all our videos, or 99% of our videos. If you've seen any of the clips that we put out, we do. When you sign to do a book with us, we will do cover art if you need cover art. We do video ads, for folks. I mean, this is all included in the packages that we do for novellas and short story collections. Our contracts are very different in a lot of ways. We do a 6-month contract, because I don't like holding people's work hostage. You trusted me to publish your book. If I publish your book and I do my job, at the end of the 6 months, you're going to want to stay with me, and you're going to want to re-sign, and then we'll continue on, down the road. But if you're unhappy with it, or I'm unhappy with it, at the end of 6 months, we can shake hands and walk away. No harm, no foul. You write another book, come back. I'd love to read it. So, I try to keep it, we do a 70-30 royalty split in favor of the author. Nobody does that. But I'm also not here to get rich on other people's work. I'm just here to expose that work to as many eyes as possible. And that's, for me, that's the joy of my day, is I get to wake up in the morning and go to my email, and there's new horror stories in there every day.
uh,
So,
since you started, would you say that you've helped publish their work published?
um, the magazine published a lot of first time writers, um, some of whom I see great potential in. One of the partners in the company early on, tremendous young writer, very young, in his very early 20s, but a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of potential. And so in the very beginning, we worked together very closely on a lot of things. It came time for him to go in a different direction. Again, no harm, no foul. We were talking about possibly running one of his short stories as an iTales story later on, later on this year. So I don't, I'm open to working with people who are open to, being open. It's like I'm not gonna lie to you. If your book is good, I will tell you why your book is good. If your book is bad, I will tell you why, in my opinion, I think your book is bad. I like to publish. I think I've published, of all the primary projects, I have published, or will this summer be publishing, a lot of female writers, um, which is really weird to me. Not that I'm getting a lot of, like, it's great, but are the people who are writing the stories versus the people who are buying the stories are two very different demographics. And that surprises me, because I would think, like, if you're a horror writer, you're going to have that horror audience, but like some of my highest, like, and the website traffic and everything, then normally the highest demographic for our traffic is between 25 and 36-year-old males. But most of the, a lot of the writers that I've published and that we have success with are all female writers, which is great, but it's weird. It would seem to me like there would be more female readers, and that's a demographic that I try to reach out to as well, because it's like, there's been a long, and it's why one of the reasons why we did the women's empowerment issue back in March was there's that long time like, oh, girls don't do horror, and that's bullshit, man. I mean, I have read some amazing horror stories from some extremely talented women, and I've done my best to get as many of them, and we've got 9 books coming out in the next 9 weeks, and I've got at least 3 of them are going to be are done by female writers of the 9, and then the rest of them, it's a very interesting variety of stuff. So,
Speaking of women in horror,
yeah.
when I put that, I got an overwhelming response of women who are horror directors, producers, artists, makeup.
Yeah, there's a ton of women in the industry.
And to the point where starting this month, I decided to do every Thursday. It's going to be Women of Horror Spotlight.
Nice.
And because when it comes to YouTube, you can see who's your subscribers for watching a video.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of are men between the ages of 28 to 45. That's my demographic. It's a huge spread. It's like 80%.
Right.
But there's a lot of women who are working into the horror industry. I think, but there's not that many women who watch horror.
Are coming to exactly when are those numbers going to start to shift? Because I would imagine, I know, if you focus on, it's like I'm gonna publish this book, and this is the intended audience for this book, or I'm gonna make this movie, and this is I'm sure that the folks who made Cocaine Bear had an audience in mind. I was one of them. I'll admit it. I loved it. It was fun. It was so much fun. So I would think, though, that there would start to be a lot of support in, it's like if you bring more women into the industry, more women who are creating, then to me, I would think that would lead to more people following, and discovering, oh, I didn't know that, like Slumber Party Massacre, directed by Mary Harron. No, not Mary Harron. No. That was American Psycho. But again, written by Rita Mae Brown. So, she's pretty significant in the whole, in the hierarchy of feminine, icons there. That's a pretty well-known name. So the fact that, there definitely have been entrenched, and I'd love to see it, because I'd like to think that it's a matter of shrugging off the stereotypes of, women don't do horror, or girls aren't into horror or anything, because, I'd like to think that it should be for everybody. Maybe you're not into one particular type of horror, but that's the beauty of the genre, is there's so much variety.
So many different sub groups in horror.
Yeah, so that's what I try. That's what I've been trying to do with Psychotoxin. I've been trying to, we do short story collections. We'll do creature books. We'll do haunting books. We'll do zombie books. Because there are so many different avenues, and there are so many different fans down those avenues, and hopefully we get some crossover too. Because I think if you can expose a reader to it's like, look, it's still a horror book, but it's not, this particular horror book has a time-traveling dinosaur that eats Nazis. Real book. It's called Splatosaurus Uberalis. It was written by the husband of one of my cover artists, Ruth Anna Evans. Her husband just finished the book. It's at a pre-order state right now on Amazon. It is crazy. Like if you like trauma, if you like the ridiculous monster like sci-fi, cheapo sci-fi channel movies, it is such a fun story. And it's zombies getting bitten, their heads bitten off by dinosaurs, or Nazis getting their heads bitten off by dinosaurs. Can't go wrong with that. So tremendous book. If anybody wants to check that one out, check that one out. It's yeah, Splatosaurus uberalis. And it's a lot of fun. It's a good one. But yeah, we've got I'll just plug a couple things if you don't mind. I mean, we've got, like I said, we've got 9 books coming out in the next 9 weeks. The first, I'll talk about the first two. The first one drops tomorrow. It's called The Tale from the Road. It's by Professor J. Rocky Colavito. It is a splatter wrestling story. So if you're a wrestling fan, it is, and a horror fan, it is right up your alley. It's about this indie federation, and their promoter makes this deal for them to go to the show, and they're like, oh, this is going to be a really big deal for our promotion. This is going to break us through to the next level. Blah 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 blah. So the wrestlers go and they go to the show, and then things get fucking really ugly from there. But it's a fun story, and it is, if especially if you're familiar with it. It's nice because if you're familiar with wrestling, you pick it up and read it, no problem. If you're not so familiar with wrestling, Rocky does an excellent job of breaking down the terms so you can understand. So people who don't know, what some of what the heel and baby face and stuff like that, if they're not familiar with the wrestling terms, he does a pretty good job of explaining it as the book goes along, so you can kind of
Most,
pick it up.
I would say I think horror fans and wrestling fans go hand in hand.
Oh, in my experience, yeah, there's certainly the Venn diagram there is certainly there's a
Yeah.
significant crossover. So that comes out tomorrow. That'll be available on Amazon for both Kindle and paperback. I try to do paperback for everything. Like I said, I love print. I love being able to hold. I have proof copies of everything we've published because I love being able to hold the book in my hand. And then after that, next week, what we're going to do is on Mondays, barring any unforeseen circumstances, we're going to use Mondays as our drop day for new iTales stories. I'm hoping to do one a week, just to continue to grow the library. I just created a new submission email for that. That's ptpitales@gmail.com. If you've got a short story that needs a home, send it over to us. We'll take a look. If it's good stuff, we'll put it out. It's, everybody, the authors get 50 cents a copy, and when it sells, and like I said, since we've opened the website, since we've opened that page on the website, there has not been a day where at least one book hasn't sold. So it's starting to pick up steam, and I'm hoping that it's accomplishing the goal of introducing old horror readers to new horror writers. Because I think as readers, we tend to get stuck because we get into the familiar. Stephen King, Clive Barker, Kuntz, Joe Hill, Anne Rice before she went, so we get like, oh, good, it's a new book by so and so, I'm going to pick that up, and ignore the brand new book by the brand new writer that's on the shelf right next to it. And that book right next to it could be, absolutely brilliant. Could be the next, whatever. Could be the next big thing, or it has the potential to be. The writer has the potential to be the next big thing. But when you're sitting on a shelf next to a more established writer, that writer's fans aren't going to give you a look necessarily. So the idea with iTales was just put it in your face. There it is. There's the cover. There's the title. For $1.25, can you really go wrong? I mean, it's less than a cup of coffee, and if you find a new writer, then you found a new writer. And like I said, almost everybody that has published a story on iTales has a longer length project in print, either through us or from another publisher. So it's that here's the single, go buy the album mentality. And I just bring that back because I used to be a musician in the dark times that were the 90s. And then next week, we've got, I can't even, next week we're releasing a book called Tell Me a Story by Mia Dahlia. Mia is amazingly gifted writer. She just released a book last month or 2 months ago, not through Toxin, but through another publisher. I don't hold that against her. And it was called Estate Sale, and it was a phenomenal read, well reviewed across the board. I am so excited to be working with her. Her new book is, in my opinion, better than her last one, and not because I'm publishing it, And her last book was great, but Tell Me a Story is it's just an amazing story. The book is solid, and that's she's got a gift, and I look forward. We're working on another project that may come out next month. I'm not sure yet, um, but she is very gifted, and this story is you don't want to miss this one. This one is an excellent story, and that'll be out next Tuesday, August the 8th. So those are the next two things coming. We'll have another ITL story next Monday. I think right now, I think it's going to be I Knew a Key to Eight Worms, which is a delightfully nasty little story, and a great cover. Because again, I've had the luck of working with some tremendous cover artists. Ruth Ann Evans being one of them. A lot of the covers in the ITL store are her work, or Stephen Farkas, who's also a writer. He does a lot of his own cover work as well. He's got a couple of books in the store with his unique art style for his book. So the plan seems to be working with iTales. It seems to be it's catching the eye. The covers are catching the eye. People are taking a risk, and hopefully, as the library grows, word of mouth will spread, and people will come back to it, or they'll be like, "Oh, hey, man, I read this story. You should go check this out." And so that's the plan. We do what we can. We publish, we advertise as much as we can, but at the end of the day, it's word of mouth. I'm not a rich man, so we do it old school. We go word of mouth. If you've read something of ours that you dig, let somebody know. Tell a friend.
Definitely.
Maybe they'll buy a book, or they'll come to the website and they'll buy an iTales story for $1.25. Because again, for $1.25, you can't lose. You can't lose with that. So so that's primarily interested. It's to get readers exposed, get old and familiar readers exposed with new, and hooked up with new writers and artists, and that's the primary goal for that. And I'm having a good time with it because we get some great stories. I mean, every day I can open my email and be like, oh, look, a new horror story today. Awesome. So it's a great way to kick off the day. Of course, I haven't written anything for myself in about 6 months, but and I don't have time, but that's okay. It's okay because I really am. I didn't think publishing would. I never. If you had told me a year ago when I was working toy conventions and stuff that a year from now you're going to have published a dozen horror books, and I'd be like, you're out of your mind. There's no way. But I just kind of fell into it, and I've been very lucky, and I've had a lot of great people who. The nicest part is that they trust me with their work. They send me this stuff because again, I'm not. We're since September, so what's that? 8 months we've been doing this. So I mean, we're still very new to the game. But people see what we do. They see the quality of the product that we put out. They see the support that we put out behind it. And there's so much bullshit out there with for $100 I'll format your book and I'll have it ready to. It's like, no, if you're going to self-publish, you don't have $100 to pay somebody to do that for you. And if you've signed with any decent indie publisher, takes care of that kind of crap for you. At least they should be. I can't speak for everybody, but the companies that I do know that I'm familiar with their work, that's all part of the service. When you sign a contract with Cemetery Dance or Crystal Lake Publishing, that's all part of the service. Whereas, I'm constantly being, barraged by ads like, oh, we can do this and we can make that. And I'm like, I already have people who can do that, man. I said, I have a team that is a growing team. I mean, I started an ARC team and they've been great, and we're getting reviews out for the books and everybody is loving life. And it's, we're keeping busy. We're very busy, but we're having a good time.
So Christopher, how can everyone who's watching find you on social media?
Well, you can find me. The easiest way to find me is I'm on Facebook as myself. You can find me under Christopher Pelton there, or you can find me through Psychotoxin Press, which is also on Facebook. If you want to reach out to us as far as submissions or anything go, the ITL store is always open for submissions, at least for now. Until if we get inundated, that would be great, but at least for now. And that's ptpitales@gmail.com. You can send them there. We've got a reading group. As they come in, they get read. People will tell me, hey, this is a good one. Let's run this, or so those are the easiest ways. We do open submission calls from time to time. Most of the time, when we do them, they'll be listed on Facebook. They'll also be listed on the horrortree.com website. Stuart is great over there. He does. Basically, it's a website to keep track of submissions from magazines or publishers. And if you're looking for somewhere to submit your work, horrortree.com, go check them out because they've got listings for days for people who are accepting, submissions for this kind of book or that kind of book. And Stuart's one of the guys who runs it over there. Has just been tremendous with us. Like I'll send him stuff and be like, I know it's kind of last minute. Can you squeeze me in somewhere on the calendar? And he's like, yeah, I can do so. I mean, he's been tremendous help, and we've been lucky. We've been able to work with a lot of people. The family keeps growing, and we're always looking for new writers, new artists, new everything. Because if the work is good, it should get out there, and that's what I'm here to do.
Great. Christopher, it's been a pleasure for
I
you
ramble
coming
a bit.
on.
I had
No, that's a interview.
All right.
Listen,
Well,
everybody, please check them out. Eyes Tale Store. There's tons of great short stories on there. It's
and
99 cents.
hopefully a new one. Hopefully a new one every Monday.
One day.
All right. Well, you
Well,
guys come check us out. Thank you, Travis, for having me. I appreciate that. And
everyone,
we'll talk again in the future, I'm sure.
and everyone, thank you for coming to the Heartland. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.